This video is made possible by Practical Defense Systems, the best online security training at the lowest prices. You can start your security career today online at pdsclasses.com. Check them out. Hi, I'm Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for all of your support of GunGuyTV and everything that you do. I'm super grateful for all of your support. I took about, almost 2 weeks off just to kind of get my get my brain waves clear again. You know, it's kind of crazy working and doing YouTube and all the other things at the same time. So I apologize I haven't posted a video in a couple of weeks, but I'm back in the saddle again and off we go. Yesterday I had an opportunity to sit down with Rick Travis from the California Rifle and Pistol Association so that he could give me a detailed update of what's happening in California. What you may or may not know is that every year there's a legislative calendar, and there's typically a lot of bills that hit all at once, and that's what's happened. He just got the list and went through the list of bills the other day, and so we sat down yesterday and he went through the exhaustive list, those bills that they support, those bills that they do not, and those bills which are just put up as sort of placeholders. And he'll explain that. But the legislature in California just puts placeholder bills up there. They may put a name on them, but there's nothing in them. And then later on, they can change the name or whatever they want. It's just a place that they basically just held a position for a bill so that they can fill it in with whatever they want later on. And sometimes because of the names they give, we have to watch them pretty closely. Now, yesterday I was having trouble with our little studio here and studio system, and so I ended up doing this in the kitchen of my house. So it's a little bit different, but that's okay. It's pretty cool. Now, before we go to that, which I'm going to do in just a second, I want to let you know GunGuyTV can be found in a lot of different places. I got an email the other day from a guy panicking because he doesn't want to use YouTube anymore. Where are your videos? Okay, you can find the videos in any of these places right here. So any of these places right here, you should be able to find them without any problem. Now, we don't post videos on. That's just a social media thing, but you will find them on Gab TV. But most popular, obviously, is BitChute and Rumble, but also Gun Streamer is pretty good, and the Utah Gun Exchange is fairly popular as well. So you can check any of those out. You can also find the GunGuyTV Firearms podcast, which obviously I didn't do this last couple of times because I was taking a break, but we'll be starting again at your favorite podcast player, and a lot of them are listed right here. However, there are many, many others. So if you just go on any search engine and search for GunGuyTV, you're going to find it all over the place. All right, let's go and get started with before I even start, I should tell you, this interview is long because there's a lot of information in it. So I've tried to edit it a little bit to shorten it for you, but it is pretty stinking long because it's this dump of all these bills that happens at the beginning of the year. All right, let's go to the interview with Rick. Rick, what's happening in the state of California with the wacky legislature and what they're planning for us now? I have my pen and paper ready to go.
Well, a couple things I want to let everybody know straight up from the beginning is, we're going into our second year of COVID, and last year, the Assembly and Senate got very upset with the governor because the governor shut down a lot of the access from everybody, from the people to the lobbyists to a lot of the secondary staff that would normally operate in the Capitol. So even our lobbyists, it's not an anti-2, I think, everyone's lobbyist right now has still been locked out. Why is that a bad thing? Because we've had people say, well, that's a bad thing. Well, it's because, believe it or not, members of the Senate and Assembly often play games, and one of those games is they'll have a senior staffer look right at your lobbyist or the person that has come in from, say, down in San Diego to argue on behalf of the CRPA or any other 2A group or any other group for that matter, and say, hey, I'm here to see Assemblyman so-and-so or Assemblywoman so-and-so, and they'll be like, oh, they're not here. Well, typically what will happen is you'll have one of your people sit in the hallway, and then amazingly, at some point, a door will open and out will walk said assembly person that wasn't in their office or some senator who'll be like, oh, Joel, have you been waiting long? Let's talk, follow me, and you finally get to talk to them. Well, that has been totally cut off because we're not allowed in the building. So our ability to actually meet head to head with a lot of these people has been extremely challenging, which is why we've had to use people phone calling, writing letters, and mostly trying to enact a little bit of pressure at the local level, which means in your assembly person's home office, which is in your area. And that has existing COVID restrictions that change based on the color code of your county or particular area. So with that said, we have several bills that remarkably only came out this Sunday because, they waited till the last possible minute to bring them out. So I'm going to tell you the ones that the California Rifle Pistol Association are supporting. And supporting means we're trying to get them through. We've teamed up with some other groups. I'll highlight those groups from the California State Sheriff's Association, the Gun Owners of California, other 2A groups, and why we're doing that as we go through them. And then we'll go to the ones we're opposing. And then some that we put on a level, and we're sharing that with you now, called Watch, which is they're more a spot bill. And just so everybody knows what a spot bill is, it's where I basically don't flesh out the paragraphs in the material, but I say, you know what, I want to have AB 4000, and that is going to be schools in San Diego. Well, Joel, who lives down in that area, doesn't know, is this a good bill, is it a bad bill? Because it's just the title. And then maybe I don't do anything with it all year, but maybe there's a school shooting. Maybe there's something else that I don't like, a storm. I can make that into anything I want under what's called a gut and amend. And
so let me make sure I understand, because you've mentioned this before, and it's always been a little goofy to me. So are you telling me that a legislator can actually put a bill out there with nothing in it? It's just an empty shell with a title, but it's sort of a placeholder, and then whenever they feel like there's an agenda, they can then fill that with whatever they want.
Correct.
Does what they fill it with have to fit the title, or can they just fill it with whatever?
This is why I tell people all the time, and that's an excellent question, Joel. I wish people asked it more often, so thank you. This is why I've told people time after time after time. Many times you might be a fence sitter on 2A issues, and that's fine. That's your right. But then you say, well, it doesn't impact me. And here's where it does impact you. If we go back to 2016, when we had what those of us that were fighting at that time called Gunmageddon, where we had those 7 horrible gut and amend bills that came out and then were replicated in Proposition 63 by, at that time, Lieutenant Governor Newsom. Let's go back and look at that. Not one of those bills had anything to do with firearms. They weren't on anybody's watch list in our community. And one of those bills had something to do with water. Another one had to do with air quality, because they were just that. They were a spot bill. And then those different members contacted by, at that time, Senator Kevin De Leon said, oh, okay, yeah, sure. And they took those bills and completely put something new in. And 48 hours later, the governor was signing them to try to prevent Newsom from being able to do his thing. We all got headaches, and we've litigated those. And those became the foundations for the Rhodey v. Bastara case and the Duncan v. Bastara on ammunition, and magazines, respectfully, and several others. So that's why we're now telling you these are bills that we're watching, because who knows where they're going to go. A lot of it depends on what we'll talk about later in the show, the Biden administration is going to do, and some of the things coming out of Sheila Jackson Lee out of Texas, which will back up. But as we go through these, for those of you, and I'm going to kind of do a little told you so moment. I don't like doing those, but I think it's appropriate. All the people that I've dealt with for almost the past decade on this, I can't tell you the number of hands and fingers that I would need to be able to count who have said something like this, Joel. Oh, well, Rick, I don't care about that assembly bill, because you know what? I'm out of here. I'm done with California. I'm moving to Texas, where Sheila Jackson Lee's at, by the way, or I'm moving to Idaho, or I'm moving to Colorado, or I'm moving somewhere else. Well, guess what? When the taxes go up, housing's not great in San Francisco, those same people that got those things done here in California moved there and started up. And I got told, oh, no, never going to happen in my lifetime, so I really don't care. And so they moved. Now you have Sheila Jackson Lee, and later on when we look at HR 127, it's going to be very familiar to a lot of you Californians. We're going to go, oh my gosh, that looks like we were in 2016 with Gunmageddon. And you'd be right. And just like I said back then, if you don't kill this in California, or when New York has some crazy law, which is why a lot of times California Rifle Pistol Association files friends of the court, or what's known as amicus briefs on behalf of New York, is because it's going to come to your neighborhood. And now we got a bunch of people waking up in the other 49 states going, what do we do?
Well, if breaking news, I always wanted to have a sign that says breaking news. We're going to interrupt the interview here because Rick had talked about this particular Senate bill yesterday. And of course, we got done with the interview. I'm editing the interview, and this morning he sends me a text and says, "Don't post it yet," because the legislature blew the whole thing up. So let's get a quick update, and then we'll go back to the other interview. What happened today with Senate? It's 264, isn't it?
Correct. It has to do with firearms on state property. And often what we see is the Assembly and Senate be competitive. So we obviously have an Assembly bill that's designed to take out, as we said earlier in your interview with me, the idea of having gun shows on state property. This is a little bit different, and I'm really going to get into it. So Senate Bill 264 would prohibit a state officer, a state employee, a state operator, lessee, license of a state-owned property from contracting for, authorizing, or allowing the sale of any firearm, ammunition, and here, wait for it, or firearm precursor part on state property and county property as specified. So let's stop and think about it. So what they added to this since our interview yesterday was now they've included every county property. And you got to realize we have lots of different activities that are done on leased county properties, leased state properties. So this just isn't the fairgrounds. And I need all of you to understand, we're not just talking county fairgrounds or state fairgrounds. We're talking any property that's owned by the state or the county. So this becomes basically they've crossed the Rubicon. If you didn't think they were coming for your guns. Now there's this term precursor part, and we were discussing this morning when all this was coming down, the term precursor part. And many, many people, like if you're a duck guy, I get it. You got your over and under, and you're like, well, and I'm not making fun because I'm a duck guy, so I'll make fun of myself. But I might sit there in the blind and look over at Joel and go, well, I got my over and under. I'm not particular fond of an AK-47 or SKS or M16, so it doesn't apply to me. Let's stop for a moment and see how it does apply to me, the duck hunter that only has shotguns. So a precursor part is not been defined by DOJ, not been defined by the court systems. It's this ethereal thing. But most of us would agree that there's a thing called a CNC machine these days. And you put 5 pounds of almost anything into it, and it will make everything from fishing weights to really cool statues of Obi-Wan Kenobi and everything in between, including lowers, including other things. But here's the problem. You're talking, most people can't tell you the difference between 5 pounds of aluminum, 5 pounds of steel, 5 pounds of magnesium. And why do I throw magnesium there? Because often you go to a gun show and there's at least 3 booths where people are selling chunks of magnesium from a bigger chunk of magnesium for fire starters, for prepping Boy Scouts, etc. So now imagine this. What happens is, we'll just pick on Crossroads, who are one of the biggest gun show promoters here on the West Coast. Crossroads has a gun show at a place near you. Could be in Arizona, because believe me, if you're in Arizona listening to this, I know many of you are, it's coming your way because your new senator wants it to come your way. So here's what's going down. They send a state-level employee that doesn't know anything. The metallurgist doesn't work on the weekend. They see the 5 pound thing and they go, oh, that's automatically 5 pounds of a material that could be made into a lower. Maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure anybody would want to make a lower out of magnesium. But now,
No.
because of that, yeah, for the record, no.
For a host of many reasons.
Right. But now what they can do is shut down the entire show. They can tell the promoter, Crossroads in this example, that you can't do anything for a year. They can boot everybody out of the show, which means that property isn't going to have shows for the rest of the year. So all those dates are going to get filled by other things like, a marijuana show, a home and garden show, whatever that show might be, which means it ain't coming back. They got rid of it. Now it does impact you, the duck hunter, because when you go in to get your shotgun parts, oh, there is no gun show. Oh, that venue of opportunity for you has been wiped out. Gone. If you like to reload, gone. This impacts everybody. They have crossed the Rubicon because they're trying to set us up. And that's why we're fighting this, because this is every county. You're also, there's questions because remember, it says allowing the sale of a firearm, ammunition, and there are people that have tried to make the argument of that if you buy a package deal on a hunt, like when I was a kid, you showed up and here's your shotgun rounds because you're running to shoot because it's one of those youth hunts. Did I buy the ammo? Did I, back in the day, we didn't consider that, but somebody could. There's all sorts of peculiarities that legal groups are going through right now as we're speaking. But this is definitely one of the most egregious things, and it's because they feel they can get away with it. So obviously the CRP is going to fight this with everything we have in us, and try to get this knocked out. But this is now a call to action where we got to get people like you listening to the show to start calling every county that, if you know somebody that's on the board of supervisors, obviously your local assembly people and senators, and say, no, this is a step way too far in the wrong direction. But I shouldn't hear from anybody in the Second Amendment community, this isn't our fight, because this impacts every person who owns a firearm in the state of California.
I think it's important to remember, too, that a precursor part is not necessarily what you would call a precursor part, whatever that may be. Precursor may be just a placeholder. Let's just call it part and leave precursor out of there. You want to buy a new firing pin because your shotgun broke. You want to buy a new, maybe you need a choke. Maybe you never had a full choke before, but you'd like to have one now. Or you never had a skeet choke, but you'd like to have one now. That's a part. So I think if we take the word precursor out of it, we understand the direction they're going. They want to outlaw the sale in the state of California of any and every part of a firearm, or anything that could be considered a part of a firearm, to the degree that you're going to end up having to have a background check every time you want to buy a spring or a choke or a grip or a stock or a whatever. You break your stock on your shotgun, or you just want to buy a Morgan butt pad to put on the end of your shotgun so that you can adjust it a little bit. Guess what? That's a part, and that's going to end up being a background check at some point, and that's the direction we're going. So this is something that we all have to get on board with. We got to get on the phone. As Rick said, don't just call your state assembly member or state senator. Fortunately, where I live, I have conservative state senator and state assembly members who will both go after this, but I also have conservative members of the San Diego county boards of supervisors, Joel Anderson being one of them, who now sits on that board. I can call Joel's office and say, look, I won't stand for this because it's going to affect us at the county level, which means the county board of supervisors now has a voice. So wherever you live, you got to get on the horn, start making those phone calls, and you got to start sending those emails, because we got to kill this thing. If they pass it, Governor Gruesome Nuisance will sign it. And then
we'll have to litigate it, and it's going to cost a lot more money.
And it'll take years. And we're stuck with it in the meantime. And yeah, we'll probably win in court at some point. But that's, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. So we got to kill this thing now.
And there's more news.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the second thing that happened, not in the legislature, but it started there, is the Duncan v. Bastara case, which is on Freedom Week, your right to have a standard capacity magazine. Not really shocked, but Bastara got approved for it to go to an en banc, which is an 11-judge panel. And so that's going to happen sometime towards the end of the next 90 days. And so you're going to be seeing alerts come out from CRPA on that. So we're raising money, because then that means that most likely they'll get a decision, because they're going to try to stack the court against us. And so even though it's pretty evenly split, there's some game playing that we're seeing already going on. And that means when that decision comes down, we'll be headed to the Supreme Court. Now, the good thing is Judge Benitez, or as I like to call him, Saint Benitez. And I'm not mocking anything Catholic or Christian. He really is like as close as you can get a state in the Second Amendment. He has made it so while we're going through this process, we can still maintain the standard capacity magazines we own till this process is finished. But it does look like that there is a very, very strong chance that this is headed to the Supreme Court.
So, we've talked about money before, and oftentimes I edit those conversations out of the interviews because the interviews are so stinking long. And I think I did with this one that we did yesterday as well. So, quickly now, this stuff costs money. It costs a lot of money. Where does the money, does the membership fee, the annual membership fee cover that?
No, we have to raise way beyond that. None of us are making any money off of this. But to get a court case successfully tried between the Supreme Court is between $1.25 and $1.75 million.
Wow. Where does that money come from?
It comes from donations. It comes from me going out saying, please, because that's what it takes. And that's part of my job and my department's job. That's what we do all the time, is go out and meet with people, explain what this is, and said, this is worth fighting for. This is part of our legacy. This is our generation's turn it back.
So first of all, before I say anything else, if you can possibly donate to these efforts, please contact CRPA and do that. I will put a link in the description so that you can get to their website, and I'll put their contact page in there where you can do that. The other thing is that if you're not a member, please join. We just said that joining, the money doesn't really help with this, but joining is important. Why?
Because the more people we can show, that gives us standing in these cases. And so there's other groups out there. You just put your email down. You're not considered by the court system a member. You're just on an email list. But when you're a paid member, that gives us standing to represent you and your Second Amendment rights in the courtroom.
Okay, so if you're not a paid member, please join. It's not, what is it, $30 a year or $35 a year?
$35. It's less than a dime a day to save your rights.
Yeah, and I don't know that because I'm a life member. So that's the reason why I don't know what the annual thing is. But if you're in California, or if you're not, for that matter, you know, we've said many times this stuff is coming to a zip code near you, and you're beginning to see that happen now, no matter what state you're in. It's also happening at the federal level. So this stuff has to be stopped at its point of origin, and right now that happens to be California. So if you're not in California, I still urge you, become a member of the California Rifle and Pistol Association. It gives them more clout when they can actually say they have X number of members who are paid.
And the other thing it does is for those people out of state, it allows you access to information so you see it coming in your neighborhood and you can nip it in the rear end long before it gets a foothold.
Yeah, and with that in mind, we're going to be doing a lot more about this stuff on GunGuyTV. Obviously, I'm not part of CRPA other than I'm a member, but Rick and I have talked about it, and Chuck and I have talked about it, and Sam and I have talked about it. We're going to be doing this a lot to try to fill the gap where other organizations are less able to do this. So we're going to start doing this more so you have the information as quickly as possible and as often as possible. Is there anything else that's happened since our interview yesterday?
Nope, that was enough. Believe me, it's been a busy day.
Well, as long as something doesn't happen in the next 15 minutes, that'll be fine. All right, we're going to go back to the original interview, and sorry for breaking in.
I hear a lot of people say, well, I'm fatigued, for lack of better terms, with this fight because I shouldn't have to fight for my Second Amendment rights. You know, that's so un-American. Well, wait, hold on a second. Before we were the United States, before there was anybody that could call themselves a, quote, American, we were all British citizens. And we need to remember on April 17th, 1775, it wasn't a massacre, it wasn't tea, it wasn't taxation, it wasn't any of those things. It was when our government, which was ran by King George, sent a general and some troops to come get our firearms and our ammunition and powder and seize them in two little towns called Lexington and Concord, that we said, okay, enough's enough. The fight for what we call the Second Amendment is at the very core of the fabric of this nation. That's what started the Revolutionary War. That was the thing that ignited it all. And Washington said, better get up there and get that army going up near Boston because it's on now. And, you know, the rest of it's history. We won the war and we have, you know, the fine states and we got our Bill of Rights and everything. But to think that we don't have to keep fighting for the Second Amendment or any of our constitutional rights, yeah, every generation has had to. And I can show that over and over again. So this concept that I should just be able to throw down the Bill of Rights and go, leave me alone. In almost 250 years, people, never happened. Everybody has had to constantly fight.
The other thing I do see a lot, and Rick addresses this quite frequently, although probably not today, is we have to make sure we're not eating our own. Mm-hmm. We fight each other about things, or we ignore the rights of the other guy. So we have to, at this point, particularly in this world of cancel culture, the hunters have got to start working with the IPSC people, and the IPSC people have got to start working with the gun collectors, and the collectors have got to start working with the black powder people. We can't just ignore the other guy because his focus on one aspect of the shooting sports or the other, or the person that just bought a gun for self-defense needs to also worry about the hunter who would like to hunt, or the IPSC guy or gal who would like to compete, or the black powder person who would like to be able to go and shoot the antique weapons. We've got to stick together because an attack on any of us is an attack on all of us, and we're not very good as a gun community at doing that, of sticking together. And we need to start doing that. If we don't, then this cancel culture and the Biden administration and the folks up in Sacramento are going to tear us to shreds. And it's not just going to happen in California, as you're seeing. It's going to happen in Texas. It's going to happen in Arizona. It's already happening in Nevada. We're starting to see a lot of states that were free states now facing these California type things. What is it Sam says all the time, Rick? California either affects or infects the rest of the country. So we've got to stay and fight. And so we don't want to harp on that much more, but there is a reason why we continually bring it up. And I wanted to make sure you understand we're not just trying to be a pain in the butt. We're trying to encourage you to continue fighting.
So that was an excellent lead-in. Couldn't have done it better myself to the very first Assembly bill that we're supporting. And we've taken a little bit of flack by some people within our community over it. And that's Assembly Bill 216. It's put out by Assemblyman Ramos, and it has to do with police officers. And so we get a lot of people in our community like, wait, cops get special privileges with guns. Why are you working with sellout, etc.? No. Number one, you got to realize there's a reason they're going after police officers. Look to Great Britain as an example. What can a Bobby actually do to you? Nothing. In fact, most of them don't even have the old traditional Bobby Billy Club anymore because that's too much. So they can sit there and go, stop. If you're a criminal, you're laughing and you're moving on. And we see it all the time.
I think they can still blow their whistle, but that's it.
Yeah. And half of us think that was their teapot telling them it was time for tea. But anyway. So one of the things that we have to be careful with is realizing that, just like Joel said a couple minutes ago, they've come after different segments, whether it be the 3-gun community, a subsection of the hunting community, to try to gnaw at us and take apart the Second Amendment in small chunks. And a lot of times with the consent of the rest of us in the Second Amendment community, because we're like, well, that doesn't impact us, so whatever. And we can't be that way. So this one has to do with, there is some movement within our Capitol to make it so that peace officers on or off duty can't take their firearms into places of business, because if they do, they might be intimidating somebody. And so what this does is it makes it unlawful for those businesses that if they're serving the general public, they have to serve a police officer when they're carrying their gun. But they can't say, no, you have a gun, get out. That's important because a lot of you go, well, I'm not going to be a cop, so how does it impact me? What Joel said earlier, CCW. Because if they can keep a cop out, they can keep you out with your CCW. And then all of a sudden you're running back and forth to your car because the bookstore says it's okay, but the coffee shop says it is okay. And where you pick up your dry clean, it's okay on every other day, but they don't tell you what day it is. That's what we're going to end up with. And it's not just going to be for your gun, because once they get that through, big government's going to push that to other areas. If you said it was okay with guns, now it's okay with, and it's just pretty soon you're wearing the same color clothes and you can't make up your mind for anything until mother says so.
Well, and if you're a knife rights person, and I'm a Filipino martial artist, so I'm a knife rights person. If you're a knife rights person and you're in California, knife laws are fairly good here. They're not perfect, but they're fairly good here. You can carry a knife in most areas of California, but if they keep you out because of your gun, the next thing is the blade, and then you're defenseless.
Right. So the next one I'll talk about, and may sound a little funny, but it's not. So Assembly Bill 334 is by Assemblyman Mullen. It has to do with skin cancer and workman's compensation. And you'd say, well, what does that have to do with us? And this comes back more to the hunting side of life. But, people who are like lifeguards, but more importantly for us, people who are like game wardens, wildlife biologists, those people protecting our rights, have one of the highest incidences of skin cancer, which isn't a surprise because they spend 95% of their time in the sun. But currently, they can't use workman's compensation for cancer treatment, but people that work inside buildings on behalf of the state can. And so this is to correct that and make it so that if this happens in the course of their employment, which it does with those that catch it, which could be the end of their life or, pretty bad for their retirement years, this would allow them to take part in something that they've paid in. So there's not a big cost to us, but this is us saying, hey, because some of you may end up with a kid that wants to go be a game warden or a wildlife biologist or something similar to that. So this is a good thing to do.
I'm sorry, what bill was that?
That was 334, Assembly Bill 334. And I do also want to point out something else too. I hear a lot of things, Joel, when you go back to eat your own, that, cops are against us. They want to take our guns from us. And unfortunately, yes, there's been some law enforcement officers across the country that have been cherry picked by like the Brady Group or the Giffords Group and been highlighted. And unfortunately, we take that, okay, well, now every law enforcement's that way. But there are several studies that have been done. The sheriff's departments here in California have looked at it. I know several of the police departments have looked at it. The men and women that are on the front lines wearing the uniforms are like overwhelmingly pro Second Amendment. I go speak to them, and they are overwhelmingly pro Second Amendment. They don't want anything more to be taken away at all from people like you and I who are law-abiding citizens. In fact, they make arguments to their bosses of why we now have more police chiefs and more sheriffs issuing CCWs, because a lot of the everyday on-duty law enforcement officers have said this is a good thing because we can't be in their back pocket and they should be able to defend themselves. And oh, by the way, CCW holders in the state of California have the lowest rate of felony and a lower rate of felony and misdemeanor incidents than even law enforcement does. Moving on, we have Assembly Bill 614 that we're supporting. It has to do with wildlife habitat, birds. And this is interesting because I think this is going to come up. Many of us who do participate in the sport of hunting, people need to realize hunters in California, if they disappeared tomorrow, according to former Governor Brown, we'd have to close almost 2/3 of our state parks because the money that helps keep those open comes from hunting and fishing fees. And in this case, there's also extra tag fees. And so there's an upland games tag, as you know, Joel, there's a big game tag, etc. Those go into an account. I happen to sit personally on both the upland and the big game committees.
There's waterfowl as well.
Right. And in the upland game committee, and I'm not sure on the waterfowl, so I won't say anything on that, but on the big game committee, both of those counts have got almost to a $10 million mark of money that's sitting in there. And the reason people fear that is because when the trout account on 2 different occasions got to that point, Governor Brown went in and grabbed the money and used it for something else. So what this bill is designed to do is help with nesting bird habitat, because as a lot of us know, the nesting areas for things like chukar is seriously threatened, pheasant is seriously threatened. This is money that's already in account, cost the taxpayers nothing. And so what this bill would direct is it would give the Department of Fish and Wildlife to go in there along with that committee, which is made up of people from like the upland wildlife, Pheasants Forever, Quails Forever, people that have a vested interest and understand this. And they would go in and say, these are different agricultural lands that habitat that have been hurt by fires, et cetera, and help to bring those back up with cover crops and vegetation and the things that would make it so more natural wildlife grew in those areas, which provides more opportunities for hunting and is better for the environment all the way around. So it's a really positive bill. There's not much reason why I would see you would oppose it unless you want that money for the governor for something else. But we've got that out there. Assembly Bill 804 is put out by Assemblyman Bill and doing a great job. This one is a free hunting days. This is done in almost every state but California. And the idea is it has, you get 2 free hunting days a year. So, and they have to be done, one in the fall, one in the spring. And the idea is, Joel, you and I know somebody who's 90 and never went and hunted. We find somebody that's 9 and never went hunt. Doesn't matter. And we say, how would you like to go on a turkey hunt or a pig hunt or something? Well, it's not this proposition if you got to spend $1,000 to try it out. It's like, you can come with me. I have a license. I take you out. You can take one thing, try it out. If you like it, now you have to go through Hunter's Ed and all the other stuff because I'm assuming responsibility. But the idea is you get that person out one time. They still have to register with the department, but they don't have to have a license. Like, this is great. And so we're trying to get this through because this is how you pass it on. I remember when my grandfather first took me fishing, I don't think I had a fishing license the first time.
I didn't.
But once he knew I was into it, I had a fishing license. I had a fishing pole and all that stuff. And, you know, that's no different than taking a kid down the street and seeing if they like basketball or anything else. It's a sport that you can provide food for your family with, and hopefully that's what you're going to do.
Rick, we've talked a lot about hunting bills. Why is hunting important?
Well, there's several reasons. One of them is, you know, during this year when we had the pandemic hit, we had a lot of people, as you know, Joel, all of a sudden realize, oh, food security, getting food that didn't have a lot of additives that might make it more susceptible to a disease or not to a disease. There was a lot of different information floating around. And so a lot of people want to engage natural food. Natural food is most often procured through hunting and gathering. The other side of that coin comes down to, for especially people that have the scary black weapons called AR-15s or M4s and stuff like that. Those are largely used by hunters for the taking of pig, as an example, in this state. And so one of the things is, if you look back at the former Governor Jerry Brown's career, anytime that argument was brought up, oh, so you're going to take away hunters' rights to go take pigs with the firearm that works the safest and the best, he would say, I'm vetoing that bill and quit sending it to me. Now, that didn't stop Assemblyman and senators from keep trying, but he vetoed every one of them on that grounds. And that's why I would look at people in the 3-gun community and go, you like your sport? Thank a hunter. Because the reason you still have it, honestly, was because of hunters. Otherwise, that block wouldn't be there. And so that's why constantly I tell people, quit eating your own and realize just because I might like to go out on 3 Saturdays and stalk a pig and take it and put that meat in my home and kids and give some to somebody else because I can't sell it, is no different than a person wants to go practice 4 or 5 months out of the year doing 3-gun. That's your thing, that's my thing, but we both support each other and we're both supporting our rights.
What other reasons is hunting important?
Wow, this could be the rest of the show.
I'll give you one. Okay. How about if I just give you one?
Sure.
You may be watching this and you might be a vegetarian, you might be a vegan. You might be a member of PETA, or you might be an animal rights person. And that's perfectly okay. I'm really grateful you're watching the show. So just so that you know. And you may have purchased a gun recently because of the COVID thing or whatever, because you wanted to make sure that you could defend yourself and your family. And that's all awesome.
Yep.
What's important for you to understand is hunting is a vital thing when it comes to wildlife management. When I was a young buck and wanted to go to college, what I wanted to study was forestry and wildlife management. So I've been through a lot of this kind of stuff, and what I can tell you is that as society encroaches more and more on wildlife habitat, there's less and less habitat available to support wildlife. And so wildlife managers, in the form of game wardens or whatever management arm you want to call it, actually track how many animals in a particular species there may be, and then how many the existing habitat will support, and then they issue hunting licenses to trim that number down so that the habitat can support the number of animals out there. Otherwise, what happens, and we have direct evidence of this because of laws that have been passed in other states in the past, what ends up happening is these animals starve and they die because there's not enough habitat to support them. So hunting is used by our government as a tool to manage the number of wildlife out there so that the habitat can support them. And when you're in the most populous state in the country, like California, but in any state where the population begins to encroach more and more on that wildlife habitat, that tool becomes vital for the government to be able to use. And in countries where they've done away from hunting or tried to do away with it, what they end up doing is hiring professional hunters to fly around in helicopters and go and start murdering this game and just basically tossing them, which is incredible. First of all, it's tragic, and secondly, it's an incredible loss of a resource because that meat is valuable meat. It can actually feed people. So hunting is a very positive thing. You may be thinking it isn't, and I wanted to at least give you that perspective where hunting is concerned. So you may not want to hunt, you may not like hunters, you may not care about hunting. I get it. Nevertheless, it's still a valuable tool that we can't afford to lose. And so it's important that we encourage those who are interested in it to get involved in that sport.
Well, and I can give a quick example that backs up here in California. We reduced the ability for people that hunt bears, and I get it. Baby bears are some of the most cutest animals you'll ever see, especially if you have the opportunity to watch them in the wild, which I've been
at a distance.
Yeah, at a distance.
Don't feed the bear.
But as a result, our bear population has climbed above what's known as carrying capacity, and that's the ability of the available land to support that particular species. And so 2 things tragically happened over the last 2 years. Number one, bears that are omnivores that largely depend on berries and things, they didn't have as much because of the weather conditions, and that has a whole other lot of stuff to do with whether it's global warming or whatever. But at that point, what happened was bears, because they're omnivores, turned to meat, and they started going after fawns. And so we have some of the lowest deer populations ever in state history. It has nothing to do with hunting directly, but indirectly it does, from the standpoint of hunters were told, leave the bears alone. So we backed off on that and haven't filled bear tags or anything like that. And so that management tool has been diminished. And as a result, 90% of like the black-tailed deer fawns this last year were wiped out by predators, bears being one of the biggest ones in that group. The second thing that happened was, if you go through that nice pass from Tuolumne Meadows down into Bridgeport off of the 395, that pass, as you know, got snowed in, got one of the worst blizzards ever. And as a result, literally hundreds of bears died in that pass because the population was too big. They pushed up into the mountains, got caught in the blizzard, and died. And so we had this huge loss of life that, as you said, those bears, had they been managed better, that wouldn't have happened, and we'd have a thriving deer population. But now we have two diminished populations in that given area because of mismanagement.
And without dragging this too far down the path, I just will state to you that this is a prime example of what happens when we make laws emotionally, rather than based upon reality, the reality situation. We say to ourselves, well, emotionally, well, I don't want these people killing the bears. Well, I get it, but there's a reason why wildlife managers manage wildlife and why they use hunting, and now you know what it is. So what else are we supporting?
Well, We're also supporting Assembly Bill 817. I'd like to see this go through. It has to do with sport fishing licenses, but hopefully we can get this, and you'll see, because there's a Senate bill that comes out of your area with Senator Jones, South San Diego. So kind of we've got these two sorted together. Here's what it is. So fishing licenses, as you know, run basically July 1 to June 30th. So the problem has always been, you want to take somebody out like Memorial Day weekend, and they have to pay this obscene fee for a license that's good for like 4 weeks and 2 days. And then it's not good the rest of summer. So a lot of people are like, no, hard pass. And then to try to get them to go out later in July or August, it's just hard because the big opportunity was earlier in May. The vast majority of the states, like it's well over 40 of them, have what's called a 12-month rule. If I buy it on, June 5th, it's good to June 4th of the next year. If I buy it on, August 7th, it's good to August 6th of the next year. It's just 12 months. You're paying one fee. What a concept. That's exactly what this bill would do. And, Assemblyman Wood is making another run at it. We're supporting it. We think this is a smart thing to do. And this dovetails into the next bill that comes out of the Senate, which is Senate Bill 470. And again, like I said, that's from Senator Jones, that comes out of the San Diego area. And that's the idea that you could have a combined fishing and hunting license. You wouldn't have to have one or the other or buy two, that you could buy one, and pay $100 fee, have the license, and then you buy the tags for whatever it is you're going to go do with it, which economically would probably up even farther. By the way, this last year we had more people buying hunting and fishing licenses. What had been a steady decline every year actually started to go up, and we think this would get more people out in the outdoors doing it, because some people just want to fish, then fine, buy the fishing license. Some people want to, but some of us like doing both. And so this would give you that ability to do it. Yeah.
Right.
So, and if you get 5% off if you do both at the same time. So it's a bit of an encouragement, but it's not going to kill the programs at all. So now we get to go to the not good stuff. This is stuff for opposing. So it starts off with Assembly Bill 311. Shouldn't come to anything that you wouldn't think, but this is going after gun shows. And in particular, it is going after what is called a precursor part, which, yes, Joel, we still don't know what that is. DOJ hasn't defined it. They haven't defined it. But now what it would be is at least minimally a misdemeanor if you were to sell the part that they haven't defined at a gun show, along with a $2,000 fine.
Oh, my.
And if it was a secondary offense, it could be 5-year probation and a $5,000 fine. And then if you violated that, then you could lose your right to have a firearm and a whole bunch of other things. It would also require the gun show producer. So like in this case, Crossroads is a big one here in California that puts on gun shows from San Diego. They would have to go and check every vendor and all their parts. So just think about that for a moment during load-in. That's never going to happen. And what's going to happen is those gun show producers and promoters are just going to say, bye, and go to another state,
right?
Which is what this is designed to do, very clearly.
That's the goal, yeah.
Right. Next is Assembly Bill 1223. It's from Assemblyman Levine, which he just hates the 2A community. I'll just say it straight up. So
we don't like him either, so it's okay. It's mutual.
He has come up with now not just a firearms, but a firearms and ammunition excise tax, which he has yet to tell us what the percentage of that tax would be. But that tax would be charged every time you buy a firearm and you buy ammunition, and could be set by the legislature as they see fit. And he thought he was being cute because he says, well, it takes 2/3 of the membership. Wait, that would be the Democrats in this case in both houses. They already have that.
Right.
So this is a slam dunk. But he's making it sound like
in case you don't know, or you're not from California, the Democrats right now have a veto-proof majority in both houses. So.
Right. So when he does it, it makes it sound like, oh, I'm trying to be very American and democratic, not the party, but the process. No, he's not. So we're obviously opposing this. The next one is Assembly Bill 1478. It's called Unsafe Handguns. And it has nothing to do with making a handgun safe. Surprise, it comes out of Assemblyman Shoe. And what this is about is, remember microstamping?
Mm-hmm.
Remember, you and I have had a couple talks. I know you and Sam have. And my joke is, it's not going to just stop on the head of the firing pin.
Nope. It's going to go on the side of the case, on the end of the...
Congratulations, because here we go. This bill is designed... This bill is designed that microscopic characters would be not just transferred on the cartridge case when it worked, but also to be imprinted on places of the interior of the pistol, on the side of the barrel, everything, to make sure everything has this microstamping on it. And if the firearm is been on the roster since 2007, you could not sell one unless it did. So whatever's in existing stock, like during this time of COVID, would be outlawed effective July 1st of next year. So again, ladies and gentlemen, this is designed to eliminate pistols in California. And then the next one is Assemblyman Bill 1509. So this is really interesting because, when we look at the enhancements that are on felons, these are people who have committed serious crimes, or furnishing a firearm to another felon, or gangs, or ammunition that resulted in great bodily injury or death. We had this thing that it could go 10 years, 20 years, or 25 years to life enhancement because you used a gun for firearms. And we have to remember, it's not precursor parts that are yet to be defined or excise tax that stops criminals from using guns. It's the penalty of jail or death that is the deterrent, not a tax on a law-abiding citizen. And that's been proven over and over. Makes sense, right?
Yep.
So this bill would take all of those and reduce the sentences to 1, 2, or 3 years. And the longest way it could be would be 5, 6, or 10 years. Well, now that gangbanger was like, wow, in my lifetime, I could only knock someone off and impress my gangbangers twice because that'd be 50 years. Is now like, that's just 10. I could do this like half a dozen times or more. And if there's a pandemic going out, we know the governor will let me out because it's under 5 years I was in anyway. So no penalty, really. Yeah, so much to say. The Senate...
I could go on for an hour, so I'm not going to do it. You know me. Rick and I are very close friends, by the way. So he knows. I mean, I'm half Italian. I could go on about this for a while. I'm not going to do it.
So here's the Senate, because they never want to be outdone by the Assembly. And I do have a little victory here. So Senate Bill 252 was to outlaw bear hunting, period, in California. And congratulations, in January, our board met on an emergency meeting, said, no, we're going to hit this hard. We did. And within 4 days, on the 2nd of February, we'd achieved victory. We put so much pressure nationwide, got everybody from some big people like Steve Ranella, who runs the Meat Eater program that's seen across the country and around the world. He went live with, like, this is stupid, and here's all the scientific reasons for it. We got groups both in this country and in Canada, even Canada, to say this is dumb. And as a result, Wiener pulled the bill and said, yeah, this isn't happening this year. Now, when I say that, victory this year, yay, it's going to come back next year.
It'll come
because
back,
he didn't
right.
say it was dead forever. He's going to figure out how to retool it and stuff. So this is why we look at you and go, yes, we got a victory, but now we got to dig in and get all of our ducks in a row and lined up, because he's going to come back literally to oppose us, hunting bear, and we're going to be ready for it. The next one is Portantino, who has asked that what we do is, if a civilian was to use their CCW or to be incarcerated, sued, everything else. So obviously, and this is a long, drawn out, like even our explanation on the website is literally 3 pages long. I don't think it will make it through. That's my hope. But it's a typical Portantino bill trying to make it so law-abiding citizens and peace officers want to leave the state.
Now, you said at the beginning what it was again.
Pretty much straight up.
You were breaking up. Can you tell us again what the bill is?
Sorry, 15. And it was very similar last year to Senate Bill 914. So when a lot of the people have been following your show, look at it, they'll be like, hey, did I see this before? Yes, it's the same bill brought back, but it's been made more egregious than it was last year.
And what does it do? Again, you were breaking up and we didn't hear what it did. Something about concealed carry permits.
No, it's not just concealed. It's largely going after law enforcement, but there's some information in there that it could be applied at a later date to us carrying CCWs. But it has to do with if your firearm is used and a civilian loses their life. And notice, that's the big thing what people notice. They say a civilian. They're not calling them what they are, which in many, many, many cases, the vast majority, they're criminals with records, rap sheets, not their first time to the party. But, anyways. And then we have a couple of watch bills that I'm going to go over those. Like I said, a lot of these deal with law enforcement's criminal gang enhancement. And the reason we're watching those, and we've got them up on our website, when you look at private security guards and alarm companies, is we're trying to figure out where they're going, because they're really going after the I don't want to call it the fringe, but normally 2A people look at their rights, as you said at the beginning. If I'm a hunter, I'm looking at hunting rights. If I compete, I'm looking at competitive rights. But there's also peace officers, there's security guards, alarm companies. There's a lot of people that carry firearms, and they're going after everybody this year. And they have watch bills. They're talking about minimum. Jones Sawyer up in Sacramento has a bill that we're watching, AB 89. He wants to take the minimum qualifying age to become a police officer from 18 to 25. They have to have a bachelor's or advanced degree from a college or university. What the legislature decides what is. So that could be liberal arts. It could be pottery, whatever. So it wouldn't be the standard administration of justice or something like that you need to go up in the department. There's another bill that they're trying to come up with that was like, you got extra credit if you had dreadlocks or piercings applying for the position, so you look more community friendly. But at the same time, if I saw somebody coming up with dreadlocks and piercings and tattoos on their face in a police officer's uniform at my age, regardless of the color of their skin or their background,
not a real cop.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. And I think that'd be true in any community, because people would be like, that's not what a police officer traditionally looks like. And so to change it with a piece of legislation overnight, that's dangerous for the law enforcement officer. It's dangerous for the community. It's not improving things. It's making it worse. And then we have, like I said, there's Assembly Bill 333 we're watching, and it's about enhanced sentences for street gangs. Obviously, that would be great, but they're not defining it. And so we're looking at that. And then there's 452, which I'm going to slow down on. And this would require a school district, charter schools, superintendent of public administration, et cetera, to advise guardians of pupils and parents each semester or quarter about access to firearms, storage of firearms, and asking the kids, where are your parents' firearms stored? And again, I know you well enough to know this could be its own entire show. So I'm trying not to go there, but that's why we're watching it. And we have one on biodiversity. This is also to set aside 1/3 of California's lands in coastal waters where humans would have to stay off of it forever because it's part of the rewilding thing, and that the best thing is to remove humans. And I will tell you that's the worst thing you can do, because humans don't care about things that they can't touch and see. So if you pull it out, people aren't going to give money to it. They're not going to do anything with it. And then
that'll just be left to rot.
Right. We're also watching 667. It deals with something that, again, I could go off on all day long, called the APP system, or the Armed Prohibited Person system. That would be the wonderful little system that has thousands of known felons with firearms, their addresses, where law enforcement could go arrest them. Of course, DOJ has got a very small percentage. I think it was, last time I checked, less than 10% have ever been contacted. But yet they go after law-abiding citizens. And I've always been like, wait, you know where the felon is that's not supposed to have a firearm. You know where they live, what kind of gun they have. Hello?
Why are you pestering me when I'm not on that list?
Right.
Right. And by the way, they're not pestering me. So
right. Yeah, but why aren't you going after those people? If this is truly about keeping the California citizenry safe from these people, then yeah, I understand if there's a couple of hundred because there's people coming on that list and stuff. But when you have thousands and tell me, well, I have to dedicate all this time to go double check a FFL or go check this or go check that, I have some serious questions on what you're doing. So, and then, yeah, Assembly Bill 876, again, is gun violence restraining orders. And so we're obviously watching because they haven't fleshed this out. This is like a spot bill. 1057, which is out of Cody Petrie Norris in my neck of the woods, is unsafe handguns. And again, there's no real backing of it. They have tracing, like how tracing will be done with firearms with AB 1191. But again, this is more of a spot bill. Ting has one on research institutes, which is designed to give more money, but didn't state where the money would come from. And then Bloom, it's a spot bill, but it has to do with concealed carry, but nothing else. We don't know what it is. So those are the kind of bills, and then we have a couple in the Senate. They're the same things. It just says FFL, controlled substances in firearms, domestic violence in firearms, and these are all spot bills, and we don't know where they're going to go. And realize, as I said to you before, some of those spot bills might be in the water department. They might be in trash pickup. So the question is, we're right now watching what the feds are doing. We have the vice president, who was our former attorney general here in this state and former senator of this state, who has said, hey, we're coming for your guns. Here we go. And we have HR, as I said before, the House resolution bill that's out, Sheila Jackson Lee. There's basically Gunmageddon all over, only on a national level, which, as you and I know, it requires you, as one of the egregious examples, to go get, as a gun owner, a license, to go through $800 and 24 hours of training. Then you have to go back for 8 hours of training every 2 years and pay for those trainings, which who knows how much those are going to cost when they get done. The government gets to decide what's in them, how they decide, when you qualify or don't qualify, and unknown fees for the renewal. But it creates a database of everybody that owns a firearm. And oh, by the way, there are separate fees for each firearm you want to use under the license. So it's not like for you and I a CCW license where you pay a fee, get your training, and then you have 3 firearms or 7 depending on the county. This is for every firearm. There is a fee. And you have to identify where they're kept, a whole bunch of things. So realize this is problematic. And one of the things I've been hitting people up on is, don't look at Joel, don't look at me. We're the 2 white guys that in this new cancel culture are the enemy of the state. But, going back and look, I work with people of all cultures and all communities. I met with a group of women who were predominantly single moms who had really good jobs, but just because of family situations and stuff, had, 1 to 3 kids and lived in the South Bay area of Los Angeles County in a not really good neighborhood where law enforcement said, we can't always get to you. And they had to struggle to raise the money. And I doubt many of them could have done it today with what's been going on with the prices of firearms, to be able to buy a firearm and go to a range once to learn how to use it. That was a actual economic struggle. If I was to look at those women today and go, oh, before you can do that, you need an $800 license, this fee for, they can't do it.
It's impossible.
You would remove their right. And what is so over the top is this is the same government that says we should be helping those people. Totally agree. Many of the people that came on board in this state during COVID were people in lower economic areas that said, I need to be able to take care of myself because this is a bad situation, and rightfully so. Tack on that extra fee, they can't do it. Flat out can't. So to me, some of this stuff that's coming out of the feds is very much socioeconomically biased against many Americans.
I have some questions for you, and that is, as we're looking at these, the list goes on, right? As we're looking at these lists of things that we're battling here, it just seems terribly daunting, and every year it's the same. There's this incredible list, and it does seem to whittle down, doesn't it? And get down to just a few, or is it always the whole year it's this monstrous list?
I always use the national pastime. I know there's arguments now that might be football or soccer, but traditionally it's been baseball. Traditionally, to get into the Hall of Fame, if you batted 285 or above, you had a good shot at it, which meant literally that 28.5% of the time you got from home plate to first base. That's all that means. That's not even a home run. You didn't necessarily even score a point. We actually knock out in an average year 85%. So when I get kicked for the 10 to 15% that we didn't knock out before it got to the governor's desk, I'm always like, if this was baseball, I'd be in the Hall of Fame. You're doing better
than Tony Gwynn.
Yeah.
And he was amazing. Okay.
Right. But then, even then, we have things like, when they put the ban on magazines, on stair capacity magazines, we immediately filed court papers. We got that held up with an injunction. We brought you Freedom Week, where we reversed it, and many of you that could never have those magazines were able to get them for the first time. And it's headed to the Supreme Court. So it's not law until we get done with the litigation. And we're still holding it up. So it's like, I know you can't access them right now, but that's not a now forever. That's a now we're waiting to see what the Supreme Court that has changed its, how it looks over the last 4 years, that we have a really good shot at this now. And
it's interesting that it's being held up not because the law wasn't decided the court didn't decide in our favor. It's being held up because the government is appealing that.
Right.
And so the judge, as typical for judges to do, put a stay on his decision long enough for the appeal to work through. But the court actually decided in our favor on these things, which is why it's going all the way to the Supreme Court. So with that in mind, and you mentioned the change in the courts, how does the change in the courts, well, first of all, I probably should just ask, does the change in the federal court system help us fight this battle?
Immensely.
How so?
It's immense of just how much that helps. And that's one of the things I keep trying to tell. A lot of our voters get frustrated with, maybe you live in a jurisdiction where, well, what am I going to do? It's just Democrats or bad Republicans, because there's those two, in an area. But I tell people the two most important local elections to take part in is for your county sheriff, because that is the constitutional officer decides, is this law constitutional or not? And that's why during COVID, you saw several county sheriffs say, no, not enforcing that. Not going to happen, because it's unconstitutional. So I don't care what you passed, governor, assemblyman, senator, because it's just not going to happen. So that's your first thing of protection. The second one is judges. And you would be surprised, well, you wouldn't, Joel, but many people would be surprised when I say, well, how do you vote for a judge? Oh, I just check the box. Do you know anything about them? No. Well, judges at the superior court level is like the farm league in baseball, to use the same analogy. If you say that's cool there, then they move up to the appellate level and then up. And that's, if you look at anybody sitting on the Supreme Court, at one point or another, they started at the lower court and bounced up. So if you put more judges that agree with upholding the Constitution in the lower courts, that's what's going to be filtering up. But if you just throw your vote away or don't vote at all, and then people go, well, where do we go to get the information? We're one of the few places in the state that we actually put out, this is what the judges stand for, and you can make your choice. We don't tell you what to choose, but we say, this is how the judge has been ruling. This is what they claim. This is the proof. And you can go, oh, they claimed that, but they did that. Don't trust them. Or, wow, this person said this, and this is what they've been doing for 4, 6, 8 years. And you kind of know where they're going. And then you can make those calls.
How has the change in the court system helped us from a litigation perspective?
Well, for one thing, we're looking at where to run cases. One of the things that's new in CRPA is we are now part of what is known as the Second Amendment Law Center, and that can be found at 2alc.com or org. I think it's .org. And what that is Michelle and Associates, which is Chuck Michelle, and Stephen Halbrook, who has done some of the most amazing legal writing and also was part of the McDonald case, which is a landmark case in the Supreme Court. They have teamed up to try to fill in the gaps that have been left as the NRA has come under attack and is obviously fighting for its very existence in bankruptcy and other courts. And so they're filling in that gap both locally and nationwide with a team of very prominent lawyers and researchers and political analysts and stuff to be able to not just look at one state, but to look at like the Ninth Circuit as a whole, the Third Circuit, et cetera, and try to get cases positioned, because now that those circuits have changed and predominantly either have what's called parity, like in the Ninth, which is almost an equal balance between liberal and conservative, or they're balanced slightly more conservative, to try to get those lawsuits brought up to make corrections that have been away from the constitutional rights.
And so I wonder where this craziness with the Second Amendment coming out of the federal government, are we going to see sheriffs in California perhaps looking at this from a sanctuary perspective because they're elected officials and protecting their constituents?
We actually have a couple of counties up north that I don't want to say anything just yet because they're going through a process. But the sheriff is working with their board of supervisors to make them two-way sanctuaries. We have, and it's important to realize that 57 counties elect their sheriffs at one time. One county elects their sheriff at a different election. That would, of course, be San Francisco County.
Okay. The one outlier in the state. Okay.
Yeah. But the concrete county, as I like to call it, where nothing's concrete. But anyways, yeah. But that could be another show. But
that could be a whole show. It really could. We won't go there, but it's okay.
But the other 57 counties, we probably have 49 to 50 really strong sheriffs. And of the ones that aren't, half of them are on the fence, but have opened up to the ideas of CCWs and other things like that, and are coming to conferences and learning about it. I can say on this show, a year ago, have you asked me, and because you did, LA County, 13.8 million people, 120 some odd CCWs. Is that going to change, Rick? And I was like, probably not anytime soon. And here we are a year later into COVID, and Sheriff Villanueva has done a reversal, and he's actually got a CCW unit. They're actually coming to our conference next month. They're actually starting to issue CCWs to people other than district attorneys and former law enforcement.
And Hollywood types. Yeah.
Yeah, they're actually starting to go to the average person that wants a CCW.
Well, and I have to join in there and eat the crow as well, because I believe in that conversation, Rick. I said not in my lifetime.
Right. Yeah. And within a year, he's changed himself. Now, is he in a battle with his board of supervisors? Are there a lot of things people could point to? Sure. But the point is, we made progress. The point is, that wasn't just political speak, because he's actually building a whole wing of his department to handle this. Now, does it take a little longer than some people would like? Yes. But also, Margaret Mims up in Fresno County might get a very robust program up in a couple of years. She's got 1 million people. He's got 14 times that.
Anything else we should talk about that we haven't?
There's lots of things we could always talk about, Joel, but
we've been on for a while, so
I think we've covered a lot of stuff. I know this has been a long show for those of you who stuck through with us, and I appreciate that. And I know I plan to be back with you, Joel, on some other stuff to go more in depth on some of these things as we progress through the year. But I want people just to keep the faith that, we basically have two choices in life. Quit moving forward, and that usually results, like everything on the planet, in withering away and not being around anymore, or continue to move forward and make things happen. And, you're not just fighting for yourself or your kids, but you're fighting for a lot of the people in the middle, because what we saw this year with COVID should be really, really great. And that is the number of people who really moved from the center and came and joined us as first-time firearms owners. And this is our chance to engage them and move slightly more left, because there's a lot of people, including people in the Hollywood elite, that were like, I'm moving and I'm not dealing with this anymore because I want a firearm, I want to do that. And several of them came out on Twitter and things and took quite a bashing for it. But understand, there's a lot of people that are believing in the same thing you believe in, and we need to have a little bit more open arms and bring them into our fold, because the more numbers we have, the better off we are. And remember to vote.
Amen. And vote intelligently, not emotionally.
Yeah.
Vote intelligently. Be informed. Be an informed voter. Mm-hmm. If you're just an uninformed voter, you're going to vote weird ways, and that causes more problems than it resolves. Well, Rick, thank you very much for being on the show again, and thank you for spending all this time. I have no idea how long we've gone, but it's been an hour or more, and I'm not going to edit it. I'm going to leave it alone, because I think this information is very key for you to get. So if you sat through this entire thing, you're amazing. You might have to do it in more than one bite. Thank you very much for all of your help. I will put, by the way, you gave a 2alc.org. I think I'll confirm that with you, and I'll put that link for that new effort. I'll also put a link in the description for CRPA. I do urge you to join and become a member. That will certainly help. And any time you can contribute beyond that, whether it's money or time, that certainly helps too. Thank you again for all of your help. Thank you, Rick, for being on the show. Wherever you go, whatever you do, be safe.